welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. The day had begun like any other. I sat at the breakfast table, sipping my coffee as the aroma of freshly brewed beans wafted through the kitchen. The early morning light streamed in through the windows, casting a golden glow over the familiar sight of our home. Everything seemed ordinary, but there was a tension in the air I couldn't quite place. "Mark, I think Emma needs a new music teacher," my wife, Clara, said, breaking the silence. Her words caught me off guard. I looked up from my newspaper, narrowing my eyes as I studied her face. Clara's expression was calm, perhaps a bit too calm. She had always been the more passionate one about our children's education, so her suggestion wasn't unusual in itself, but the timing struck me as odd. "What's wrong with Mr. Davidson?" I asked, folding the newspaper and setting it aside. Clara sighed, brushing a stray lock of her chestnut hair behind her ear. "He's fine, but Emma isn't progressing as well as I'd hoped. She needs more one-on-one attention. I heard about this young teacher at the music school, Lucas. He comes highly recommended. Several parents have been raving about him." I took another sip of coffee, contemplating her suggestion. "If you think it's best, then we should give it a try," I said, trying to be supportive. Clara knew our children's needs better than anyone. If she believed Emma required a change, I trusted her judgment. Her eyes lit up, and she gave me a grateful smile. "Thank you, Mark. I knew you'd understand." I shrugged, standing up to get ready for work. "Just want what's best for Emma." As I left the house that morning, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. But I pushed it aside, focusing on the day ahead. Underscore 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 underscore. Weeks passed, and Lucas became a regular presence in our lives. Clara spoke about him often, praising his skills and dedication. She arranged for private lessons at home, claiming it would be more convenient for Emma. I didn't question it. If this was what our daughter needed to excel, I was all for it. But as time went on, I began to notice changes in Clara. She seemed more distant, often lost in thought. When I asked her about it, she brushed off my concerns with a reassuring smile and a quick kiss on the cheek. "Just busy with the kids," she would say. Still, the feeling of unease persisted, gnawing at the edges of my mind. I started working late, partly to distract myself and partly because I felt an invisible barrier forming between us, one that I couldn't quite understand. It was like living in the shadow of something I couldn't see, but knew was there. Then, one evening, everything changed. I had stayed late at the office again, but this time, something urged me to go home earlier than usual. I left work just after 8, picking up a cake and a bottle of champagne on the way. It had been a while since Clara and I had shared a quiet evening together, and I wanted to surprise her. Perhaps a little celebration would remind us both of the connection we used to share. The drive home was uneventful, the streets dark and quiet. The kids were spending the night at their grandmother's, so I expected the house to be silent when I arrived. But as I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something strange. The living room lights were on, and the faint sound of music drifted through the slightly open window. A smile tugged at the corners of my lips. Clara must have been practicing on the piano. She loved playing, though she rarely found the time these days. I imagined her sitting there, lost in the melody, and I felt a pang of affection. I unlocked the front door quietly, wanting to surprise her. As I stepped inside, the music became clearer, soft, sensual, a melody I didn't recognize. My heart raced with anticipation, but there was something else too. an undercurrent of dread I couldn't quite shake. I moved silently down the hallway, the cake and champagne forgotten in my hands. The closer I got to the living room, the more the unease grew. And then, I heard it, voices. A man's voice, low and intimate, followed by Clara's soft laughter. My steps faltered as I reached the doorway, my heart thudding in my chest. I peered inside, the sight that greeted me freezing the blood in my veins. Clara was at the piano, her back to me. She was draped over the keys, her shirt hanging open, exposing her bare back. Standing close behind her, Lucas, the young music teacher, was leaning over her, his hands on either side of the piano, caging her in. The air around them was thick with an unspoken tension, the music filling the silence between their words. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My mind screamed at me to turn away, to leave before I saw any more, but my body refused to obey. I was rooted to the spot, my world collapsing around me as the truth unfolded before my eyes. Clara moaned softly, the sound ripping through me like a knife. She arched against Lucas, her body responding to him in a way that was reserved for us, for our private moments. Except now, there were no boundaries. No secrets. Just the raw, undeniable reality of her betrayal. Lucas, please, Clara whispered, her voice trembling with desire. Anything for you, he murmured, his lips grazing her neck as his hands moved over her body. The music swelled, filling the room with a haunting melody that seemed to echo the turmoil in my soul. I had to get out of there, had to escape before they realized I was there, but it was too late. The cake slipped from my grasp, landing with a dull thud on the floor, the champagne bottle clinking against it. Both of them froze, their heads snapping towards the doorway. Clara's eyes met mine, wide with shock and horror. Her hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. Lucas straightened, his face paling as he took a step back from her. Mark, Clara's voice was barely a whisper, thick with guilt and fear. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. My throat was tight, my chest heaving with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. The silence stretched between us, the truth hanging in the air like a poison. Finally, I managed to speak, my voice cold and hard. Get out. Lucas hesitated, glancing at Clara for guidance. But she was too stunned to react, her hands trembling as she clutched her shirt to her chest. I said, get out. I repeated, louder this time, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. Lucas didn't wait for another command. He grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair and fled the room without a word, his footsteps echoing down the hallway as he disappeared into the night. Clara and I were left alone, the music still playing softly in the background, a cruel reminder of the moment that had shattered everything. I'm sorry, she finally said, her voice breaking as tears streamed down her face. But her apology meant nothing to me. It was too late. The damage was done. I turned on my heel and left the room, the sound of her sobs following me as I walked away from the life we had built together, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. The night is restless. The silence in the house, once comforting, now feels suffocating. I lie awake in the guest bedroom, staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene in my head over and over. Clara's face, the sound of her voice, the way Lucas touched her, it's all burned into my memory, searing like a brand. My phone buzzes on the nightstand, cutting through the oppressive quiet. I glance at the screen, a message from my brother, Jake. Jake, hey, man. How's everything? Haven't heard from you in a while. I consider ignoring it, but the need to talk to someone, anyone, overpowers the desire to shut the world out. I type a quick response. Me, not great. Can we talk? The reply is almost instant. Jake, I'm here. What's going on? I hesitate, my fingers hovering over the keys. How do I even begin to explain? I take a deep breath and start typing. I caught Clara with someone else. A music teacher. At home. I don't know what to do. There's a long pause before his reply comes through. Jake, Jesus, Mark. I'm so sorry. Do you want me to come over? No. The kids are at mom's. I'll pick them up tomorrow. Just, needed to tell someone. Jake, I'm here for you, man. Whatever you need. Thanks. I toss the phone aside and bury my face in my hands, the weight of everything pressing down on me. The urge to break something, to scream, to confront Clara all over again pulses through me, but I force myself to stay still. Nothing I do right now will fix what's broken. The next morning, the tension between Clara and me is palpable. We move around each other like strangers, careful not to touch, not to speak more than necessary. She looks like she hasn't slept, dark circles under her eyes, her face pale and drawn. Mark, please, she starts, her voice fragile. We need to talk. Later, I snap, not ready to hear whatever excuses she has prepared. Mark, she insists, stepping closer, her hand reaching out as if to touch me, but stopping short. I'm sorry. I know I hurt you, but we need to talk about what happens next. Next. I turn to face her, the anger flaring up inside me. There is no next, Clara. You made sure of that. Her eyes fill with tears, but she doesn't back down. We have to think about the kids. They need both of us, no matter what. I take a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside me. She's right about one thing, we need to think about Emma and Jack. But the thought of staying in the same house, pretending everything is normal, feels impossible. I'm picking them up from mom's today, I say, my voice flat. We'll tell them together, but I'm staying in the guest room until we figure this out. She nods, her tears spilling over. Okay. I want to make things right. Right? I laugh bitterly. You think there's a way to make this right, Clara? You slept with another man in our home. Where do we even start with right? She has no answer. She just stands there, broken, and for a moment, I almost feel sorry for her. Almost. Later that day, I drive to my mother's house to pick up Emma and Jack. The drive is long, the road stretching out in front of me, giving me too much time to think. I pull into the driveway, and before I can even turn off the engine, my mother, Judith, steps out onto the porch, waving me over. Mark, she calls, her voice warm, but there's a question in her eyes. How are you, dear? I force a smile as I get out of the car. I'm fine, Mom. Just, a lot going on. She gives me a knowing look, the kind only mothers have, as if she can see right through the lie. The kids have been great. I hope you and Clara had some time to yourselves. I nod, not trusting myself to speak. Come in, she says, ushering me inside. The kids are playing in the backyard. The sound of their laughter echoes through the house as I step inside, the warmth of my childhood home wrapping around me like a blanket. It's a stark contrast to the cold tension of my own house, and I feel a pang of guilt for not being here more often. Judith sits me down in the kitchen, pouring me a cup of coffee. Is everything okay, Mark? I glance at her, considering telling her the truth, but the words get stuck in my throat. How do you tell your mother that your marriage is falling apart? We're just dealing with some things, I finally say, avoiding her eyes. It's complicated. She doesn't press further, just pats my hand and smiles softly. I'm here if you need to talk. You know that, right? Yeah, I mutter, feeling the weight of her concern. Thanks, Mom. The drive back home with the kids is filled with chatter about their weekend at Grandma's. Emma talks excitedly about the new song she's learning, and Jack rambles on about the new friend he made at the park. I nod and smile, trying to keep up with their stories, but my mind is elsewhere. As we pull into the driveway, Clara is waiting by the door, her face tense. The kids don't notice the strained atmosphere between us, too busy racing each other to the front door. "Hey, Mom!" Jack yells as he barrels past her into the house. "Hey, sweetheart," Clara replies, her eyes following them with a sad smile. Emma lingers behind, her eyes flicking between us. She's more perceptive than her brother, and I can see the questions in her eyes. "Dad? Are you coming?" I force another smile. "Yeah, I'm right behind you, Em." She gives me a hesitant look before running inside, leaving Clara and me alone on the porch. "We need to tell them," Clara says quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I nod, feeling the weight of what's about to happen. "Yeah. We do." The kids sit on the couch, their faces serious as Clara and I stand before them. We've explained that things are going to be different, that Dad will be staying in the guest room for a while, but we'll both still be here for them. Emma's eyes well up with tears, and Jack looks confused, like he can't quite understand what's happening. "Are you getting a divorce?" Emma asks, her voice trembling. Clara hesitates, glancing at me, and I can see the pain in her eyes. "We don't know yet, sweetie. But no matter what, we both love you very much." Jack frowns. "But why, Dad? Why can't you just stay in your room?" I swallow hard, trying to find the right words. "Sometimes, grown-ups have problems that are hard to fix, buddy. But we're going to do our best." Emma sniffs, wiping her eyes. "I don't want you to get a divorce." "We don't want that either," Clara says, her voice breaking. "We're going to work really hard to figure this out. I promise." The kids don't say much after that. They just sit there, holding each other, the weight of our words pressing down on their small shoulders. Watching them, I feel a surge of anger towards Clara, but also towards myself for not seeing this coming, for not protecting them from this pain. When we finally put them to bed, the house falls into an uneasy silence. I head to the guest room, my mind racing, knowing that the hardest conversations are still ahead. As I lay in the dark, the events of the day replay in my mind, the reality of what's happened settling over me like a suffocating blanket. My marriage is on the brink, my children are confused and hurt, and the life I thought I knew has been shattered into pieces. The only question that remains is how, or if, any of this can ever be put back together again. The days blur into one another. Each morning, I wake up in the guest room, the walls feeling closer and closer, the bed colder and less familiar. The kids have adjusted as well as they can, but I can see the strain in their eyes, especially in Emma's. She's always been perceptive, able to read emotions like notes on a sheet of music. Clara and I have maintained a facade of civility, but the tension is palpable, a crackling undercurrent that neither of us can ignore. It's a Saturday morning when everything begins to unravel further. I'm in the kitchen, pouring myself a cup of coffee, when the doorbell rings. Clara is upstairs, still in bed, so I set the mug down and head for the door. I'm not expecting anyone, so when I pull it open and see Lucas standing there, my blood runs cold. "What the hell are you doing here?" I growl, my hand tightening on the doorknob. Lucas looks as uncomfortable as I feel, shifting his weight from foot to foot. He's holding a small bouquet of flowers, as if that could somehow soften the impact of his presence. I came to talk to Clara. Talk to Clara. I repeat, incredulous. "Are you out of your mind?" He raises his hands in a gesture of peace, but it only stokes the fire inside me. I know I messed up, but I need to speak with her. Please, just let me explain. I take a step forward, closing the distance between us, my voice low and threatening. "You've done enough explaining. You don't belong here. You're not welcome." Lucas opens his mouth to respond, but before he can say anything, Clara's voice cuts through the tension. Mark, who's at the door? I glance over my shoulder to see her coming down the stairs, dressed in a robe, her face pale as she sees who's standing on our doorstep. She freezes, her eyes wide with shock and something else, fear, maybe. Clara, Lucas starts, but I cut him off. Leave, now, I demand, my voice hard as steel. But instead of backing down, Lucas looks at Clara, his expression desperate. Clara, I just want to talk. Please. Clara hesitates, her eyes darting between us. I can see the conflict in her face, the guilt, the regret. But there's something else, too, something that makes my stomach churn. She's considering it. She's actually considering letting him in. Clara, I say, my voice quieter but no less firm, don't do this. She looks at me, and for a moment, I see the woman I fell in love with, the mother of my children, the person I've shared my life with for years. But then she turns back to Lucas, and I know, in that instant, that whatever we had is hanging by a thread. Mark, I need to talk to him, she says softly, almost apologetically. The words are like a slap to the face. You need to talk to him. I repeat, my voice shaking with anger. After everything that's happened, you're going to invite him into our home? She flinches at the word our, as if she knows it no longer holds the same meaning. Please, Mark. Just give us a few minutes. It's important. I can't believe what I'm hearing. Part of me wants to grab Lucas by the collar and throw him out of the house, but I know that would only make things worse. So instead, I take a step back, my eyes never leaving Clara's. You have 5 minutes, I say coldly. And then I want him gone. She nods, and I see the relief in her eyes, which only deepens my sense of betrayal. Without another word, I turn and walk out the front door, slamming it shut behind me. The cool morning air hits me like a punch, and I take a deep breath, trying to calm the rage simmering inside me. I walk down the driveway and lean against the car, my hands shaking. I can't stay in the house while they talk, I'd lose my mind. But I also can't bring myself to leave. I need to know what's happening, even though I'm terrified of what I might hear. Time drags on, and I lose track of how long I've been standing there. The 5 minutes I gave them stretch into 10, then 15. Finally, I can't take it anymore. I push off the car and head back towards the house, my heart pounding in my chest. As I reach the door, it swings open, and Lucas steps out, his face pale and drawn. He looks at me, and for a moment, I think he's going to say something, but then he just shakes his head and walks away, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I watch him go, a mix of anger and relief washing over me. When he's out of sight, I turn and walk back into the house, shutting the door behind me. Clara is standing in the living room, her arms wrapped around herself, as if she's trying to hold herself together. She looks up as I enter, her eyes red from crying. What did he want? I ask, my voice tight with barely controlled emotion. She swallows hard, struggling to find the words. He wanted to apologize. To explain. Explain. I say, my voice rising. Explain what? That he was sleeping with another man's wife. What's there to explain, Clara? I know you're angry, she says, her voice trembling. But it wasn't like that, Mark. It wasn't just about that. I stare at her, incredulous. Not just about that. Then what, Clara? What the hell was it about? She wipes her eyes, taking a deep breath. It started out as just music lessons, but I don't know. I was feeling lost, disconnected. You were always working late, and I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I shake my head, unable to comprehend what she's saying. So this is my fault now. Because I was working to support our family. No, that's not what I'm saying, she says quickly, her voice pleading. I'm not blaming you, Mark. I'm just trying to explain how it happened. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I didn't want to hurt you. Her words hang in the air, and for a moment, I want to believe her. I want to believe that this was all a mistake, that we can somehow fix what's been broken. But the image of her with Lucas is burned into my mind, and I can't shake it. What did he say to you? I ask, needing to know, even if it kills me. She hesitates, biting her lip. He wanted to see if there was any chance we could still be together. The room spins, and I feel like I've been punched in the gut. And what did you say? She looks at me, her eyes filled with pain. I told him no. I told him that I need to try to fix things with you. That's what I want, Mark. I want to fix this, to fix us. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. You think this can be fixed? After everything? I have to try, she says, stepping closer to me, her voice desperate. Please, Mark. I know I've hurt you, but I love you. I love our family. I don't want to lose you. Her words hit me like a tidal wave, and for a moment, I feel the anger start to ebb, replaced by a deep, aching sadness. I want to believe her, to believe that we can somehow find our way back to each other. But the wounds are too fresh, the betrayal too deep. I don't know if I can ever trust you again, I admit, my voice barely above a whisper. She reaches out, her hand trembling as she touches my arm. I understand. But I'm asking you to give me a chance. To give us a chance. I look into her eyes, searching for the truth. There's fear there, and regret, but also a glimmer of hope. I don't know if it's enough, but I find myself nodding slowly. Okay, I say, my voice heavy with the weight of the decision. But things are going to be different, Clara. It's going to take time, and I don't know if we'll ever be the same. I know, she says, tears spilling over again. But I'll do whatever it takes. I promise. We stand there in the living room, the silence stretching between us. It's a fragile truce, built on the rubble of what we once had. Whether it will hold or crumble is anyone's guess, but for now, it's all we have. As I turn to leave the room, Clara calls after me, her voice soft. Mark. I'm sorry. I don't respond. I don't have the words. Instead, I head back to the guest room, closing the door behind me, shutting out the world once again. The days that follow are a blur of strained conversations and awkward silences. Clara and I do our best to navigate the wreckage of our relationship, but it feels like we're walking on eggshells, both of us terrified of saying or doing the wrong thing. The kids pick up on the tension, their laughter more subdued, their questions unspoken but hanging in the air between us. I try to focus on them, on being the best father I can be, but my mind is always elsewhere, on Clara, on Lucas, on the betrayal that I can't seem to escape. Then one evening, Clara comes to me with a proposal. Mark, she says softly, standing in the doorway of the guest room where I've been staying, I think we need to get away. Just the two of us. Somewhere we can talk, without the kids around. I look up from the book I've been pretending to read, meeting her gaze. A getaway. Now. She nods, stepping into the room. Yes. We need to figure this out, Mark. We need to decide what we're going to do. I was thinking we could go to the cabin, your father's old place. It's isolated, quiet. Maybe we can reconnect. The cabin. I haven't been there in years, not since my father passed away. It was his retreat, a place where he'd go to think, to escape the world. I used to go with him when I was younger, fishing in the lake, hiking in the woods. It's a place full of memories, both good and bad. Do you really think that'll help? I ask, skepticism lacing my tone. She sighs, sitting on the edge of the bed. I don't know. But we have to try something, don't we? We can't just keep pretending everything is okay. I study her face, searching for any sign of deceit, but all I see is the woman I've known for so many years, looking tired and desperate. Despite everything, part of me still wants to believe in her, in us. Maybe getting away from everything will help. Maybe it's what we need. Okay, I say finally, closing the book and setting it aside. We'll go to the cabin. The drive to the cabin is long and mostly silent. The road winds through dense forest, the trees pressing in on either side, the sky overcast and gray. Clara stares out the window, lost in her own thoughts, while I grip the steering wheel, trying to keep my mind from spiraling into dark places. When we finally arrive, the cabin looks just as I remember it, small and rustic, nestled among the trees, with a view of the lake through the clearing. I park the car and get out, the crisp mountain air filling my lungs. It should feel peaceful, but instead, there's an undercurrent of unease, a sense that something isn't quite right. Clara steps out of the car and looks around, a small smile playing on her lips. It's beautiful here. I'd forgotten how quiet it is. Yeah, I say absently, grabbing our bags from the trunk. Let's get inside. The interior of the cabin is simple, just a few rooms, with a stone fireplace in the main living area and large windows overlooking the lake. We set our bags down and Clara immediately busies herself in the kitchen, making tea. I wander over to the window, staring out at the water, lost in thought. Mark, Clara calls from the kitchen, her voice slightly strained. Can you help me with this? I turn and walk over to where she's standing, but as I approach, something catches my eye, a glint of metal on the countertop. It's a small object, almost hidden behind a jar of sugar. I pick it up, my heart skipping a beat as I realize what it is, a key. And not just any key. It's the spare key to the cabin, the one my father always kept hidden under the floorboard by the front door. Clara, I say slowly, holding up the key, why do you have this? She turns to me, her eyes widening as she sees the key in my hand. For a moment, she's speechless, her face pale. I found it in the drawer, she stammers, but I can see the lie in her eyes, hear it in the tremor of her voice. No, you didn't, I say, my voice growing colder. This was hidden under the floorboard outside. You wouldn't have found it unless you knew it was there. Her mouth opens, but no words come out. I take a step closer, my pulse quickening, a horrible suspicion starting to form in my mind. Clara, why did you really want to come here? I told you, I thought it would help us, she says, but her voice is too high, too shaky. No, I say, shaking my head. There's something you're not telling me. Before she can respond, the sound of footsteps outside catches my attention. I spin around, staring at the front door, my heart hammering in my chest. Who could possibly be out here, in the middle of nowhere? Mark, Clara says, her voice rising in panic. It's not what you think. The door swings open, and Lucas steps into the cabin, his face set in a grim expression. He stops when he sees me standing there, the key still clutched in my hand. You've got to be kidding me, I breathe, the realization hitting me like a ton of bricks. You brought him here. You planned this. Clara takes a step towards me, her hands outstretched, pleading. Mark, please, listen. Don't. I shout, the anger finally boiling over. Don't you dare come any closer. Lucas, ever the coward, takes a step back, but Clara isn't deterred. Mark, it's not what you think. We were going to talk to you, to explain everything. Explain what? I demand, my voice trembling with fury. That you've been planning this behind my back. That you thought you could somehow manipulate me into forgiving you. Or were you just going to run off with him and leave me here to rot? She shakes her head, tears streaming down her face. No, Mark, I swear. We just needed to talk to you, to try and make things right. Make things right? I laugh, a bitter, hollow sound. You think this is how you make things right? By dragging me out here, to the place where my father died, just so you could ambush me with him? Lucas finally speaks, his voice low and urgent. Mark, it wasn't supposed to be like this. We wanted to talk to you, to explain. Shut up, I snap, turning my fury on him. You don't get to say anything. You don't get to come into my life, ruin my family, and then pretend like you're the victim here. He swallows hard, but doesn't say another word. Clara steps in front of him, trying to shield him from my rage, and the sight of her protecting him only makes my blood boil. I loved you, I say, my voice breaking. I trusted you. And this is how you repay me. I'm sorry, she whispers, her voice choked with tears. I'm so sorry. But the words mean nothing to me. They're just empty sounds, devoid of the love and commitment they once held. I can't stay here, in this place that's been tainted by their lies. I can't stay with her, not after everything she's done. Without another word, I turn and walk out of the cabin, slamming the door behind me. I don't know where I'm going, but I know I need to get as far away from them as possible. The cool night air bites at my skin as I make my way down the path towards the lake, my mind racing with thoughts of what could have been, of the life I've lost. Behind me, I hear Clara calling my name, but I don't stop. I don't turn around. I just keep walking, letting the darkness swallow me whole. I don't know how long I walk, but eventually, I find myself at the edge of the lake, the water black and still beneath the night sky. I stand there for a long time, staring out at the water, the sound of my own breathing the only thing I can hear. The anger has burned out, leaving only a deep, hollow emptiness in its wake. I've lost everything. My marriage, my family, my trust in the person I thought I knew better than anyone. There's no going back now, no chance of reconciliation. The love I once had for Clara has turned to ash, leaving behind only bitterness and a deep, abiding hatred for what she's done. In the end, there's nothing left to say, nothing left to do. The only thing I can do is walk away, leave this place and these people behind, and try to rebuild whatever pieces of my life I can salvage. I turn away from the lake, the cabin barely visible in the distance, and start walking back to the car. As I reach it, I see that Lucas's car is still there, parked next to mine. The sight of it fills me with a final wave of disgust, and I know that this is the last time I will ever see either of them. I get into the car, start the engine, and drive away without looking back. The road stretches out before me, dark and uncertain, but at least it's a road away from the past, away from the betrayal that has torn my life apart. As I drive, the only thought that stays with me is this: I'm done. Done with Clara, done with Lucas, done with the lies and the deception. Whatever happens next, it will be on my terms, without them in it. And with that final resolution, I disappear into the night, leaving behind the life that was, and embracing the uncertain future that lies ahead.